Greetings everyone, welcome to today's video. Major spoiler warning for the Naruto anime because today we are going to be covering my Itachi Uchiha build. So welcome to the video. I'm Rakamdar, content creator, and today I wanted to share with you guys my build for Itachi Uchiha from the Naruto anime. As I mentioned in the intro, spoiler warnings throughout the video, and I probably spoiled stuff throughout the intro trailer bit there too, so that's why I did it at the very start. But yeah, basically I wanted to share with you guys, or I wanted to kind of work at a build for Itachi. This actually started out as a Sasuke build. I was kind of, inspired to mess around with the black fire jutsus, but then ultimately there was a lot of Sasuke already out there, and I felt like, with some of the unique things that are in Elden Ring, I actually can make Itachi kind of doable. And so I wanted to see if I can make it work as best as I can, and so that is kind of what we are going to be doing here. There's going to be spoilers for the game itself, obviously, and then spoilers for like almost all of Naruto, because we're going to be covering pretty much every single iteration of Itachi and talking about his development throughout the show and how I tried to emulate a lot of his powers that you'll see. So if if you obviously want to watch Naruto, this might spoil a lot of that stuff for you. So without further ado, let's jump in right away with our cosmetics, as you can see here. So Itachi is kind of hard to get right, mostly because the hair is not perfect. I wonder if I can... yeah, the hair, there's really not a ton of great hairstyles. I liked this one because it kind of... it was a little edgy and it kind of simulated that, but this one's not terrible. I think this one also works out a little bit, and you can kind of see that I'm not the best character creator. But so I went with this one mostly because I felt like, it kind of fit some of the more, broody nature that Itachi has. But aside from that, you can kind of mess around with this, experiment with it how you would like. There's also probably going to be some mods that deal with this, shore up a lot of the problems with the character creator. But basically the gist of it is pure black hair color, and then whenever it comes to the eyes, we went ahead with pure red for the eyes to kind of match the Sharingan. So that's kind of what we're doing. So that is the creation of the character. We went with the cleric in order to get the faith for part of the build. So that was the starting class. I also really like the actual outfit that you get with the cleric. You can obviously get this without picking the cleric class, but the confessor armor, I think that this is a pretty nice kind of black cloak armor set that really kind of fits the character. This is mostly I chose this again for Sasuke. I think this fits a little bit more Sasuke, but we do have other things that we can use to emulate the Itachi build. So the one that you're seeing here right now, this is kind of the outfit that I went with the most. This is the Rotten Gravekeeper cloak. You can obtain this from one of the super late game areas in the game. This is going to be obtainable from this Consecrated Snowfield Catacombs, all the way up here at one of the later sections of the game. And I feel like this simulates a little bit of Itachi's post-death reanimation style. He kind of has this red outfit going on in the when he's reanimated by Kabuto. And so I was basically trying to simulate that a little bit. Obviously, he's not shirtless when he's wearing this in the anime, but obviously, I can't really do anything about that, unfortunately. So I kind of have to deal with that on its own. Plus, you know, Itachi's pretty hot. I wouldn't doubt that he would go shirtless occasionally. But then we also have another version that I think is also very viable, and that is the Black Knife armor set. You can kind of mix and match the pants. I went with the white reed greaves. I thought they looked pretty cool. It's still a little difficult to kind of get the pants just right, but you can kind of mix and match these to kind of simulate a little bit of his outfit that when he's in the Anbu Black Ops. So the actual Anbu Black Ops outfit, I feel like the Black Knife armor is kind of the one that gets as close to that as possible, and it also kind of has some of those properties of a ninja, right? The Black Knife armor set silences your footsteps if you are using it. Come on. Right, yeah, right, so basically traces power, yet remain, concealing veil, which muffles the sound of footsteps. So you also kind of, not only do you get the opportunity to sort of look like Itachi, but you do get the, you know, the kind of ninja assassin silence type playstyle as well, so you can sneak up on people and do ninja things. So those are the two kind of outfits that I really went with the most. I used the red cloak a little bit more. I think it looks cooler, the red cloak with the white reed outfit. I think that this is probably the more interesting outfit as well. So I went with this, and this is kind of how I decided to make my look. Alright, now that we have gone over kind of the cosmetics and the appearance, let's actually talk about the build that we are using to kind of emulate Itachi as best as we possibly can. Alright, so the stats that you're going to see here, these are the stats that I went with. I'm at level 155, a pretty average level that you can probably beat the game with. Obviously, if you're playing purely PvE, you will be able to, you can jump this as far as you want to, 200, 250, however you need. But I went with 155 to kind of get an idea on what the major kind of focus is whenever you're allocating your stats. And then also if you're, a PvPer, this is kind of the range. Usually it's level 150, but I decided to go 155 because I wanted the 50 vigor. I had 45 before this, and I wanted to make sure I had the 50 vigor. And you'll see the reason why we need the faith at 46, and we're going to be using arcane at 60 as we discuss our spells and equipment. So that's kind of the stats that we're going to be using, and and basically the reason that we are using those stats is because of the actual spells and equipment that our build is trying to do. I keep mixing this up. So the spells that we're going to be using is we're going to be having the Black Flame Ritual. The Black Flame Ritual is going to be kind of our Amaterasu stand-in. So Amaterasu is the black fire that both Sasuke and Itachi will use. And Itachi doesn't use it nearly as frequently as Sasuke, but he does use it during his fight with Sasuke to kind of surround the battle arena. And I feel like that is a perfect kind of representation of that, the Black Flame Ritual itself. And so you can kind of see that he's got this really, really powerful black flame just kind of circling around him. It's really, really reminiscent from the actual fight with Sasuke. And it's really good in the game. It's a really powerful spell, and if you want, you can even offhand one of the Godslayer talismans in order to actually take advantage of the boost that it will give. And it just does a good amount of damage. It also staggers people, so if we run up here to kind of get this guy aggroed, the circle that this makes is going to be smaller if you don't charge it all the way, but if you charge it, it will be a bigger circle than as you saw before. And basically it staggers people as they try to approach you, and it does a pretty substantial amount of damage. So that's kind of the stand-in for Amaterasu. Like I said, Itachi doesn't use it nearly as frequently as his brother. Sasuke spams Amaterasu all over the place, and so the other Black Flame spells are a little more reasonable, or a little bit more thematic when you're trying to cosplay Sasuke instead of Itachi. But because, that Itachi does still use it during his major fight, and it is still one of his, signature attacks, I wanted to kind of emulate that a little bit with the Black Flame Ritual. The next fire-based spell that we're going to be using is Giant Flame Take Thee. This is going to be basically the giant fireball jutsu. And this also can be charged, and it is a huge flame that just 1600 damage, let's go. And we're not even at 80 arcane to kind of get the most out of our stats. And that's just how much it did. That's the power of the Godfrey Talisman and the Godfrey Icon and the Fire Scorpion Charm, just boosting up our damage. This is basically one of the Uchiha clan's signature type moves. All of the Uchiha clan do a lot of fire. You could probably even justify some of the other fire spells in the game if you really want to. I think you could probably justify Flame Fall Upon Them if you want to continue the fire-based projectile stuff. And of course, Flame Sling is a pretty simple early game fireball spell that all of the Uchiha clan pretty much use. I'm pretty confident to say that, you know, Itachi has used this, and I'm pretty sure I remember him using the giant version of the fireball jutsu during some of his fights. So that is why we are using Giant's Flame Take Thee. It also just is a really good spell. And so that is kind of the fire-based elements of this particular build. And if you want, again, you can offhand the giant, the Giant Seal. So this is the Godslayer Seal, boosts Godslayer incantations, and the Giant Seal boosts Giant's Flame incantations. And so if you're offhanding them with your right hand and you use your left hand, then that is going to be boosting up the damage of this. We can even go ahead and test that out real quick. We came here for that purpose, to test all of these out, so might as well, you know, charge it up, toss it out, boom, 2031 with that percentage boost from our Godslayer Seal. So it is a pretty powerful spell. It has a huge knockback, as you saw from that particular usage of it. It will knock enemies away, it will do a ton of damage, and it's a really good spell. I really like this spell quite a lot. It is one of my main ways of dealing a ton of damage. Oh, that missed. So that is something that we will try to, you know, take full advantage of as we play the game. It looks like the whole camp got alerted, or at least this big dude here. And so we can charge this up. You can see here, even with his shield, he's still able to take almost half of his health. I mean, these are lower game, you know, lower tier enemies, but still. This is a really powerful spell that we will be using throughout most of our... this will be one of our main damage dealers for the PvE side of things. Alright, so we went ahead and covered the fire jutsus that Itachi is well known for, but there's another aspect of his character that he is known for even more so than his usage of his signature move Amaterasu, and that is his signature move, the Tsukiyomi Genjutsu. So Genjutsu in Naruto, for anyone who might not be familiar with the show, is basically an illusion technique. You project illusions to that person and basically kind of screw with their head and make them think things are happening that are not really happening. When it comes to the Uchiha clan, their genjutsus are primarily tied to their visual prowess with their Sharingan, and therefore they need to make eye contact in order for them to be able to kind of apply genjutsus onto whoever they're trying to face off against, their enemy. Itachi is known in the ninja world as one of the strongest wielders of genjutsu, and therefore that is one of his signature techniques, and his Mangekyo Sharingan gives him the technique of the Tsukiyomi, which is a powerful visual genjutsu. In order to apply the Tsukiyomi on his opponent, he needs eye contact with them, and then he subjects them to, usually it's like a day's worth of torture in a single few seconds. Like he sends them through. It feels like they've been in there for a whole day, but it's only been in real time, like a couple of seconds. And he used this on Kakashi. He basically like stabbed him a ton of times, put Kakashi up on like this kind of cross-like figure, and then stabbed Kakashi a ton with like swords and such. That was like the first usage of it that we got to see in the Naruto show, and it was so crazy. Kakashi at this point had been kind of hyped up. He's a really strong ninja, and then Itachi just shows up and makes quick work with him using his powerful genjutsu. And so I was really kind of trying to figure out how to really implement that into the game, because it's a very prominent thing that, Itachi is known for. And then it hit me. madness is a thing in this game. And that is why you see 2 madness spells on our spell list. Frenzied Burst and Inescapable Frenzy. And oh man, this was such a kind of a really cool realization, because the madness, whenever you inflict madness upon your enemy, they kind of go crazy. They get stunned for a brief moment. And that moment of stun is basically when you, as the player, can you can go in, get some hits in or something, but it really kind of captures that Genjutsu feeling where the person who gets hit by the Genjutsu of Itachi, they just basically go insane. They're in real life, if you're looking at them, they're just kind of like squirmishing in pain. They're kind of stunned there for a brief moment. They're kind of going, and they've gone mad basically. And so I feel like that's a really close representation of it that we can do. I mean, obviously this is not a perfectly open game where I can just manage to figure out ways to make it seem like a actual Genjutsu. But I feel like the madness, the actual madness condition and the madness status effect is so close to that, that nature of the Genjutsu, that this is a perfect way for us to use it. And so we have Frenzied Burst. Unfortunately, this is going to kill the dude, especially if I charge it up like this. It does a ton of damage, 1400 damage, and this is only with 60 arcane, and there is a talisman, or not a talisman, a seal in the game later that does boost up the actual frenzy spells, but I haven't been able to get that yet. The quest line is a bit longer and I wasn't familiar with it, so I still had to kind of work through that. You can look it up on the wiki if you really want to, but essentially this is a really powerful spell, and it'll stun them if they go mad. Unfortunately, for our purposes of building this kind of PvE game, or PvE build I should say, sorry, it doesn't really work all that well when it comes to inflicting madness upon normal enemies. The humanoid enemies can be inflicted with madness. That is something that you can do. However, most of the enemies in the game, all of the other enemies, there's not, they can't actually be inflicted with madness. But I felt like the laser beam that you're seeing here, it kind of simulates Itachi, long distancing, making eye contact. Obviously, it's not perfect because the person can be turned around and they can still get hit by the beam and take damage and such. But I feel like this is the closest representation to a long distance application of Genjutsu that I could apply or figure out in the game. And then additionally, we are using the Inescapable Frenzy. This is a grab that you will apply on your enemies. And basically what it does is whenever the enemy gets grabbed, I'm going to have to kind of mess around here. These dogs are messing it up. So here we go. Once you, unfortunately, you can't grab normal enemies. That was very disappointing when I found this out. I was really excited to kind of do this on these soldiers here. And unfortunately, it doesn't work. But I will show you some footage of this being used in some PvP against other Tarnished. I didn't use it in actual PvP. I only used it in the Volcano Manor PvP sessions. So that is something. Unfortunately, I didn't. I'm not a PvPer, so I just showed it off. Basically, it grabs them. It kind of does this, this kind of pennant stare from Ghost Rider, so to speak. You look straight into their eyes, do a ton of damage in the middle of the grab, and then apply some madness to them. And basically, that was the other version. If Itachi kind of got close to you and was able to land a grab, or kind of get a hold of you and you couldn't get out of it, he would basically just kind of stare you down and apply his Genjutsu. And so I was kind of trying to, emulate that. As you can see there, perfect grab, no block, and all he does is take some damage from the hitbox of the grab. And that's very disappointing. I can't believe they actually don't let you do that to these normal enemies and only applies to the kind of PvP Tarnished, the ones that are going to be basically as if you're playing against another player but are NPCs. So unfortunately, that's a very unfortunate element of this build. And so if you really want to, if you're not a fan of the inescapable frenzy for your PvE stuff, feel free to take that one out and go ahead and use other things. I don't think that's too unreasonable. You can throw in another fire spell because, you know, he still uses those extra fireballs. He doesn't have to grab. But I really like the actual, you know, implementation of the frenzied burst and how that kind of interacts. We can go ahead. I'll go ahead and show you guys some actual implementation of the madness going off here in a second. All right, so here you can see we got invaded by this guy, and we can go ahead and try to inflict madness upon him. He's gonna have a lot of health, so it should be a lot easier. Boom. He's a lot faster. Let's get him into a... Oh, for real? All right. There we go. And there's the madness, you know, the madness going off in like real time. Really powerful effect. And then we can also go ahead and show another implementation. I threw some footage over top of oh shit, he just killed me. Never mind. All right. So there's footage of the actual implementation of madness when it comes to using the various things. I know I wanted to show another example. I wanted to show the madness actually going off with the laser beam to kind of prove that it, you know, it still applies to madness and doesn't just do a ton of damage. I'm pretty confident in saying that that it actually does work whenever you're using it against these basic enemies. If I wasn't doing as much damage as I am, like, you can actually put madness on them. It's just really, really hard because it does do a ton of damage. So, you know, it doesn't happen, you know, instantly, and it only builds it up so much. So if they end up dying from the attack, or if they die from 2 attacks, I'm going to try against this thing. These guys usually have a lot more health. So let's see if it puts madness on them. Man, really, two shots doesn't actually apply madness. That's pretty wild. If I'm being honest, I kind of figured usually 2 hits is enough to actually apply madness. I'm quite surprised 2 hits isn't enough for these guys. That's why we did the arcane. By the way, arcane applies, or boosting arcane, similar to bleed in this game, will make madness kind of stack up faster, and therefore whenever using madness against these types of enemies, you're going to want to be able to build it up much faster. Ideally, we would have 80 arcane, and I feel like that would make this demonstration a lot better. I wouldn't have to use like 3 casts to get the build up of madness. But yeah, so that's kind of our Genjutsu. We apply infinite Tsukiyomi, and that kills them, or that makes them go insane and gives us enough time to kill them, you know, otherwise. And so I was really happy when I found this, you know, figured this out and kind of worked this into the build in order to really emulate and simulate the Genjutsu as best as I possibly can in a game like Elden Ring. And the really cool thing about it is it actually has like some drawbacks, right? Whenever you cast madness spells, you actually get this meter, you know, the madness buildup on your character. And that's pretty cool because there's actually a drawback in the anime for using your visual jutsus too much. Itachi is about to go blind because he's been using them so often, and then Sasuke also has some problems when he starts using his visual genjutsus all the time, where basically if you keep using them, they have a huge drawback, a huge kind of toll on your body. And Sasuke himself was about to go blind before they started doing crazy eye transplant stuff in the anime. And so I think that's also really interesting that we can kind of have that in this game mechanically. The madness buildup kind of simulates the toll on the character for trying to use too much of their visual genjutsu. And I think that's really cool that there's like some small mechanical elements to the actual usage of genjutsu and the usage of this madness stuff that simulates a little bit of that from the anime. So I think that's pretty cool as well. As we're wrapping up the madness discussion real quick, I will go ahead and mention what our physics flask is kind of going to be doing. So for the physics flask, for our purposes, is basically going to contain the flame crack tier. This is going to give us a boost in fire damage, which is a majority of the damage that we'll be doing. So for spamming our black flame ritual, spamming our giant fireball, this will help boost that. And then we are also using the leaden hard tier, which temporarily boosts our poise. This is very powerful whenever we're combining it with our inescapable frenzy. Basically, whenever you cast this, you kind of have to go into this kind of animation before the grab actually goes off. And for the most part, you're probably going to get hit out of this animation. But with the actual, with the physics flask being the leaden heart tier and giving us a boost in poise, it'll basically boost our poise just high enough for us to be able to withstand a couple of attacks before the actual animation goes off. This makes it so that whoever we're trying to use it on can't just interrupt us, and we'll likely be able to get the full, get the grab off and go into that. You'll be able to see that in some of the footage. I used the physics flask right before using the grab so that I could make sure that I would guarantee it if they tried to stop me from using it, which the NPCs pretty much always do. They're just going to try to hit me. So if you're playing against a good player and you're doing online stuff, you might not be able to get away with it. But sometimes if you're doing, even if you're doing invasions, people will think that they can just smack you out of it. And that's a good way to kind of bait them in, get the grab, and do a really good amount of damage. I didn't do a lot of PvP, or I didn't do a lot of PvP for this because I'm not a big PvPer, which is a little unfortunate because the nature of our Genjutsu style build will kind of lend itself a little bit more to the PvP side of things, but it's not something that's unviable in PvE, as we'll talk briefly after I finish up the build. So anyway, now that we're done with all of that, we have two more things that we need to discuss. The first is the Susanoo, which is a manifestation of chakra around the user. This is kind of the final evolution of a Mangekyo Sharingan user. Once you have fully mastered the Mangekyo Sharingan, you are now able to utilize the Susanoo ability. There's only a few of them that's shown in the actual anime. Sasuke, obviously, Madara, and Itachi, all three have used Susanoo to varying degrees, and Susanoo has ultimately evolved into being pretty crazy towards the end of the show. Sasuke starts off with pretty weak stuff. He has like this manifestation of it around him, and then uses it to kind of defend and attack. Sasuke eventually evolves to getting a kind of half upper body armored dude, where basically the upper body of an armored kind of thing is surrounding him, and then eventually he gets the full body of the entire armored dude and basically runs it around, kind of moves it around like it's a giant Megazord, so to speak. Itachi unfortunately died before he mastered it, so he only could do the upper body. But I did think it was worthwhile to kind of figure out a way to simulate the Susanoo in my build. I really am happy that the Dragon Claw is a thing, because this is how we are going to be simulating the Susanoo. This is a very powerful kind of attack. It basically, on the arm that you use your seal, your sacred seal, you will be kind of encompassing your arm in a dragon claw and then bringing it down for, a huge slam that just destroys any enemy that you are facing off against. It does a ton of damage, as you can see, and it's really slow, but, if you manage to fully get it off, it does do a good chunk of damage. Now, I know it's, not very, it's probably one of the least accurate representations of a Naruto spell in Elden Ring. It's really hard to simulate the actual Susanoo in Elden Ring, because it's like, there's really not another type of, there's really no, I was like going through the list of spells, I was like, what do I use? There's like some spells that, summon forth a summoned forth skeletons, and I was trying to see if there's any of them that, you know, did anything similar. And for the most part, I just really couldn't find one. If you know one in the comments, let me know, because I might have missed it. I'm not sure. There's a ton of stuff in this game that's easy to miss like that. And I would totally be down to switching up switching it up a little bit if I can. But this was the closest that I could really find to the Susanoo, and so this is basically what I'm using. And then finally, we have one last thing to really talk about, and that is the usage of crows in most of Itachi's moveset. So if you're thinking of Itachi, most people might think of crows. That's one of the things that's kind of closely resembled or closely attached to this character is how often he'll just, you know, disappear into a bunch of crows, reappear somewhere else, and just really disorient his opponents with them. So, you know, you might think of Genjutsu, you might think of Amaterasu, but most people think of the crows. And this was one of the hardest things that took me a little while to finally try to emulate as close as I could in this game, because you don't really have anything like that. And then I realized that Raptor of the Mist was in the game. Boom. So Raptor of the Mist is this kind of special Ash of War that allows you to go into this protective, crouch state. And while you're in this crouch state, if you take damage from an enemy, you will disappear and then reappear above them. And so you can kind of see here, if I time it properly, like a good player would, I will be able to disappear and reappear above them. And this is really cool because not only does it have, disorienting properties like Itachi using his crows does, where he'll oftentimes, the enemy that he's facing off against will think they got a good hit on him, and then he'll just disappear into a bunch of crows, appear behind them, get in a huge attack on them or something of that nature. This has very similar properties to that. But it also has the kind of feather animation, coming out of it. Whenever it's, whenever you start it up, you got feathers. Whenever you, disappear and reappear, you got feathers. So it really, you could easily justify yourself by saying that's crows. Those are the feathers of crows. I am Itachi Uchiha. You actually get to feel like you're playing as Itachi by, using this type of spell. And then obviously, since you're kind of appearing above the enemy, you will be able to go for a counterattack. I haven't been doing it here, but you will be able to follow up this kind of reappearance into the air with a jump attack. Since you are in the air, and if you using an ability or using an attack in the air, it does qualify as a jump attack, and that is why you may have noticed we're using the Claw Talisman. This will enhance our counterattack abilities with our cool Ash of War, giving us a ton of extra damage from our jump attacks. If you want to use the chest piece that boosts jump attacks as well, that's completely fine. I definitely wouldn't be opposed to that type of thing. In terms of, the chest piece isn't fully Sasuke or fully Itachi type look, but it's still good, and it's close enough, right? You're still kind of, an edgy looking assassin dude. So I could totally see that being, justified. So yeah, Ash of War is going to be Raptor of the Mist that we use throughout the game in order to roleplay our favorite edgelord, Itachi Uchiha. And that pretty much wraps things up in terms of, our discussion around the actual build, the actual spells that we're using, and the actual, kind of combination of tools that we decided to use. We also have, I forgot to mention that the Fan of Daggers, this is our kunai replacement or kind of equivalent in the game. So basically, this will throw out a bunch of kunai in a kind of cone-like fan of, in a cone-like area in front of us. And Itachi is very much known for crazy kunai shenanigans. He does it quite a lot. Unfortunately, you can't do the cool, badass tricks where he like bounces them off each other to land a critical hit on his enemies, but we can still use these to kind of have some range projectiles that are very much ninja in nature. They don't do a ton of damage. I think they're dex based, if I'm not I might be speaking Alts, are they dex based? Yeah, they have Scalian dex, so they're dex based. So I don't have a ton of dex, so you can boost up the damage of these, more if you want to go into that direction. But I ultimately chose to prioritize the other elements of this build. Anyway, as with any build for this game, there's many different ways you could approach this and many different ways for you to kind of figure out how you would like to roleplay or cosplay as Itachi. And there's a different variety of tools that you can use to still kind of feel like Itachi. I wanted to do kind of the more unique route with the Genjutsu and try to get that to work. Unfortunately, as I was like kind of researching and working on the video, as you may have noticed, I realized that it's not as powerful in the PvE. I could have swore that there was like a lot of different ways to use it and affect PvE enemies, but it does seem like that it's very much restricted to PvP with the exception of how much damage it does. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to work on this video and like showcase a cool build that I was really happy about. I felt like I did a really fun job, or a really good job of getting as close to as I could to what Itachi might feel like in this type of game. But that's going to wrap up the rest of the video. I do apologize for this coming out a little later than intended. As you can probably tell from my voice, I did get a little sick, and I did kind of have some other things come up, so wasn't able to sit down and really pump out the video as fast as I had hoped. I really wish that this would have... My goal was to get this done like a couple weeks ago, but it's out now. I hope you guys will enjoy the video. Feel free to drop down below and like and subscribe and such if you enjoyed it, and there will be... and if you want to see more gaming content from my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Still kind of unsure what I'm going to go into next. I did finally play and beat Sekiro as well within my... within the time that I wasn't working on videos, so I might do something on that. I'm not sure. There's a lot of things that I want to talk about for the next couple of videos, so be on the lookout for that. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling on here. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.